Hello and welcome to my review of the Western Digital My Passport USB 3.0 external hard disk drive. I recently acquired this hard drive as a backup medium for my data files and just wanted to share my experience with it. The one I purchased in particular was a 1 terabyte model. One thing you'll notice about the Western Digital disk drive is that they come in some very pretty bright colors. I chose I guess you would call it red. It's almost hot pink. I guess it won't get lost. You'll be able to find it in the dark. Okay, so let's get down to the testing of this drive. As you'll see, I'm going to plug it into a USB 3.0 port on my PC here. If you'll notice, USB 3 ports they're designated by a couple of things. They have an SS in front, or if you see a label for one, it'll say SS and then have the little USB icon, and SS stands for super speed. Kind of silly because, a few years from now, super speed, what was super speed one day will now be slow speed the next day. So but whatever, they decided to put a little SS there, and also you'll notice the internal plastic of the USB drive is blue, and that also designates a USB 3.0 port. So my desktop PC happens to have USB 3, and so I'm going to plug it in there and just see how fast this interface is. For my first test here, I'm going to do a large file. This is a movie file. It's a little over 7 gigabytes in size, which is, I guess, the size of a standard DVD, essentially. This is an entire DVD. And I'm going to copy it from my internal hard disk, which is, I've got 3, as you can see, on this computer, and the 4th one that's appearing here is the Passport, which is connected via the USB 3.0. So I'm just going to use the Windows interface, and drag and drop this 7 gigabyte file from my F drive to the Passport and see how quickly can it accept this file. So here we go. It's copying. I see that, wow, it's actually pretty fast. It started out at about 150 megabytes per second, but the speed that it starts out at is kind of insignificant, and the reason being is that drives have RAM caches, and so the initial speed that you get when you write to a drive will be much faster than the sustained throughput of your drive, because the data isn't actually going to the drive initially. It's just going through RAM buffers. And so it can transfer the data from your PC into a RAM buffer much quicker than it can actually write it out to the disk drive. With a large file like this, however, the RAM buffer will quickly fill up, and so then what we'll get at the end is the actual sustained write speed of the drive. And what I'm seeing here is that the speed of this drive is actually really good. At the end of this transfer, it's still clocking in at about 110 megabytes per second, which is it's actually just as fast as the internal drives. If I copy from an internal drive to another internal drive, which is running on a I guess a SATA interface, which is typically how disk drives are connected internally on your computer these days. This external USB 3.0 drive is keeping pace with the internal connections of hard drives. So that's actually really very impressive. For my second test here, I'm doing a slightly different test. This is basically the same type of test. I'm just dragging, in this case, a folder full of files from my internal hard drive to the external My Passport Western Digital drive. And the difference here being, instead of one large file, it's going to be a folder full of, in this case, it's actually full of image files from my digital camera. So each one of these files is about 5 to 10 megabytes each. That's probably a little bigger than most files you would have. Like, for instance, your document files are not going to be that big. But it does give you an idea of how the speed will diminish when you're copying multiple files versus, one big file like the movie file that I did previously. And so what I'm seeing here is that the speed is still very good. I'm seeing a sustained rate of about 47 megabytes per second, which is very, very good. And so overall, I'm very pleased with this drive. I'm a little surprised that it's this fast, and it apparently is just as fast as having a drive internal to the machine. And so far, I've only had the drive for a few days now, so I can't comment on long-term reliability. But so far, the speed seems to indicate that this definitely was worth an upgrade. My old USB 2.0 drive would come in at about 20 megabytes per second on a multi-file transfer. It came in at about 30 megabytes per second on a very large file transfer. So overall, this new little drive is about 2 to 3 times faster than my USB 2.0 drive that I replaced it with. I do like the very compact form factor, and hopefully this will give me many years of service and keep my data safe and secure.